Hey, Deb.
Hi.
What are you doing?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
I can.
Okay.
Yay. How's that lighting? Is it any better?
Uh,
Not really.
it's not the same. No, that's better. The other way is better. Yeah, that's a little better. Yeah. Well, now well, it's weird. You get,
All right. Yeah. No, hang on. I'll move this. Is that any better?
that does help a little. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know what the deal is, but it's just very dark in here. And if I open the window shades, then I get a lot of glare.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, most homes don't have natural studios, right? Built in.
No, but I did get this special light, so it was supposed to help. I think it does help some, but
Yeah. Yeah.
Hello, Barbs.
Hi, Raul.
hi,
How are
Rob.
you?
How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Doing well.
We're having a cameo appearance.
Cameo, yeah.
Yeah, we didn't see you last week, I don't think.
No, yes, I was there, behind the scenes.
Behind the scenes. Okay.
Yeah. Now we're getting into the Hollywood production level side of things.
Understood. As directed by, as produced by.
Exactly.
That's right. That's right.
Oh, you got to roll out the red carpet sooner or later.
Hey, can you just try advancing a page so we can see if that's working?
Sure. Give me 1 second here.
Because I have the little arrows, and the last time I had those, I was only doing it on my screen. Yeah, perfect. Okay.
Good.
Yep.
So you'll be running the PowerPoint, right, Raul?
Yes.
Great.
Just give me the cue.
Will do.
Next slide.
Do.
Oh, there's the other Barb.
Aha.
Hello.
Hello. I probably don't need to be on the podium thingamy.
Okay.
I mean, I don't mind either way, but I don't need to be. I'm just listening today.
Okay. I will open the door for you to leave the stage left. if my theater if my knowledge from theater class serves me well, I think that they would always say, exit stage left.
Oh, now you're getting all stagey on us, huh? All right, I'm going to play with my lighting while we're still waiting. See if I can get better lighting at all. How's that?
I think that is better.
I think it's a little bit better.
Yeah.
Raul's got that halo over his head, though.
I know.
You look very angelic, Raul.
Does look like a very nice halo, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It does. It does.
We'll have an angelic experience today.
Well, that would not be how I would describe talking about financing a home, but you never know. You just never know.
Just
Don't
never know.
It's hard to say that that is an angelic experience.
Yeah.
Although, you know, some people do really well.
You are so busy, Deb.
Well, I'm just waiting. I just, you know, I'm a little OCD.
I finished reading Atomic Habits yesterday. What a book.
Oh, really?
What a book. I could definitely revisit that one numerous times.
So what's your new atomic habit then?
I'm doing this program called 75 Hard.
75 heart?
Hard.
Hard.
Because it's hard to do every task that's required, but in the end, it is worth it for your physical health. So here's what you have to do every day
Okay.
for 75 days in a row.
Okay.
And that includes weekends. That's why it's 75 hard.
Got it.
And apparently, this program, I don't know if it's recognized on a national level or even international level, but it was established in 2019. And you have to do 2 workouts a day, 45 minutes each workout,
Oh, my Lord.
one inside and one outside. And if it's outside, regardless of weather conditions, I mean, you can choose to go outside when you want to, but as long as you do it outside, then you can check off that goal there, that task. A gallon of water a day.
Wow.
No alcohol or junk food. You have to.
I was like, and the point of life is what?
Oh, that's one of the hardest ones. You have to stick to the diet that you say that you're going to stick to.
Okay.
You have to read 10 pages of a book a day, like a physical book. You can't do an audio book or a Kindle, like a nonfiction book, 10 pages a day.
Okay.
You have to do at least 1 post to the accountability group because integrity matters, right? Because the final step is you have to post a progress picture. And the reason for the accountability group is they're there to encourage you and support you and cheer you on. But if you miss doing any one of those steps, they
yell at you.
Let's say let's say I did everything except I forgot to take the progress picture. integrity matters. So if
Mm.
if I'm on day 21, and and everybody's going to have a busy day at some point. Every day you're going to feel like you're not going to be motivated to do it, or life happens. But integrity matters with this group. So if I'm on day 21, I had a rough day and I did everything except post that progress picture, then the rule is you have to go back to day one.
Oh,
So that's why they call it 75 hard.
yeah.
And I am currently on day 6,
For the first time or a repeat?
the first time.
Well, I would think it would be so difficult just scheduling in that 45 minutes inside and outside. I know I try to do workouts and so forth, and if I can find 40 minutes once a day, I think I'm way ahead of the game.
Yeah.
So I am in awe. I don't know how you do it, and
I don't either.
good luck.
It's the halo effect.
Yeah, there you go.
Oh, yeah.
Woo.
So those are my continuous atomic habits, I guess you could say.
Oh my goodness.
Physical activity and reading a good book.
Okay.
My next book is Courage is Calling.
Courage is
Courage is Calling.
calling. Oh, okay.
Where do you fit in writing your own book?
When I have energy,
Right now you're exhausted, but
usually on the weekends is when I have just a little bit extra energy to work on it.
wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
that's coming along. I I don't see Tremaine. Do you?
No,
Mm-mm.
but you would know how to look for her more than we would.
Guess we'll give her a few more minutes. Welcome to all who are joining us and hearing about my exhausting challenge, but rewarding challenge at the same time. Oh, I can see the and feel the difference
Really?
just in my yeah.
Well, that must be exciting. I assume the difference, there's some positiveness to that. And so that is rewarding to feel it. Oh, look at the bottle of water you've got.
Can't even fit it on the screen.
Yeah.
I drink 4 of these a day.
Wow.
I didn't even think it would be possible, but I mean, at one point I thought even 1 was a lot of water, but 4 now feels like 4 of these feel like 1 now.
Alrighty then.
Oh, but yes, it's you can see it and you can feel it in your skin, like your skin looks better. You feel lighter. Like I haven't weighed myself, but I definitely feel lighter. Yeah.
Well, 90 minutes of exercise every day is going to make a difference.
Make a difference.
And if you're not eating junk food.
No.
Okay, I have to ask, since we still have a little time, is chocolate, like straight dark chocolate, okay because it has antioxidants, or is it bad for you because you might enjoy it?
That is okay because it's part of the snacks that I have, which is those what do you call them? It's a trailer. Can't even. I'm going to show you. Is it trailer? I keep thinking trailer.
Hey,
Uh,
Nicole, I don't mean to interrupt, but it is 11:36. We should probably get going.
Yeah.
Yep. I will let you know more.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
a pass on dark chocolate for sure.
Okay.
Welcome everyone to part 2 of home ownership, financing a home. If you missed part 1, I will be sending the slides with you after today's workshop. And of course, you can also view the recordings of last week's workshop and this week's workshop on our YouTube page, which I will also share. And as usual, if you have any questions, you can either raise your hand or use the chat box. And for now, I will turn it over to Barb and Deb.
Okay. Thanks, Raul. And good morning to everyone. Why don't we go to the next slide, please? And just to follow up on Raul's comment, let's do a quick review of what we talked about last week, just to set the stage for what we're going to be doing today, which is getting into a lot more detail about the financing of a home. So last week, we talked a little bit about, is home ownership right for me? In other words, is this a good financial decision? Because as we talked last week, it is a very large transaction. It is a complex financial transaction. And you need to have a pretty good understanding of what the risks are. There are clearly some benefits. We talked about the possible and or likely increase in the value of the home over time. So there is that financial benefit over time. The notion of and enjoyment that many people feel in the owning of a home, the belonging to a community sometimes. There are those benefits that are not insignificant. But we did talk last week also about disadvantages, and that probably boils down to costs, and more costs. There's the cost of the home. There's the cost of any interest payments on a loan that you need to have. There are fees to buy the house. There are ongoing costs to maintain the house, pay taxes on the house, and so forth. So back to point number 1, this is an important financial decision, and you need to be well prepared. We talked a little bit about where do I start, and the importance, because of the size of this financial transaction, for knowing your own finances. What you have available, what you might be able to finance, and so forth. And you'll start to see some of this come into play as we review some of these loan programs. And then a little bit on, how do I find a home? And what am I looking for anyway? So those are some of the basic questions that we were talking about last week. Now, as we move into how do you finance a home? There's at least we're assuming at this point, you figured out the kind of home you're interested in, the size, the location, the type, at least in general terms. You know your credit score. You know roughly what you might be able to pay down payment wise. In other words, how much money can you put up front for the home? You have a pretty good idea of what your current debt level is. It's the auto loan, the credit cards, college loan, anything, other kinds of debt. You've taken a look at that relative to your current income, because these are all the types of questions that are going to come into play when you start thinking about financing your home. And with that kind of basic information, we can start walking through some of the basic choices for financing that home. We'll talk a little bit about what this mortgage loan is. Mortgage loan. These words are used interchangeably. In other words, sometimes people will use the word mortgage. Sometimes they'll say home loan. Sometimes they'll just say loan. What we've done in this presentation is gone back and forth. Hopefully that gives you a little bit more comfort in understanding that these are all terms and words that are used when we're talking about a loan for a home. There are a lot of different kinds of mortgages. We're going to go through some of the basics of what those different kinds are, the requirements or qualifications for a particular mortgage, the rates, and usually there is some kind of a choice between a fixed rate, in other words, the interest rate does not change, or variable rate, and in that case, the interest rate will change over time. The number of years for the loan, that's not always the same number of years, and how credit scores can be a factor in the type of loan that you can get. And then we're going to spend a reasonable amount of time just on a number of examples of mortgage loans, programs that are offered. This is not all of them, but we picked out what we thought might be the ones of most interest to our group of students. And at this point, Deb and I would like to offer this disclaimer. We are not mortgage bankers. We are not professionals in this field. We've had some experience buying our own homes, of course, to share with you if possible. So our idea behind this presentation is to give you an overview of some of these programs, but we can't answer those very specific questions that you may start to have about your own personal finances and, oh, would I qualify for this particular program? That's a conversation that is much better had with a professional, like a lender. This is usually where you go first and probably finally to get that loan to help you understand how to come up with the best solution for the home that you're interested in. So importantly, this is the beginning of helping with understanding how to finance a home. From here, what we do offer on these pages where we're giving examples of these mortgage programs is a website. So certainly, if you're interested in that particular program, go to the website, do your homework, review, and then you're going to be better prepared for that conversation with the lender about the home that you're interested in. Okay? So with that, let's go on to slide 3. Okay, so let's start with the basics. What is a mortgage or home loan? Well, a loan, which is borrowed money, is used to buy a home. It's a legal agreement with a lender, and you repay both the money that you've borrowed and interest on that money that you borrowed. The time period is set for the payments, so you don't have to guess when it's due. It's set in advance. And importantly, you do not own the home until you pay in full. There are lots of jokes about the bank owns the home, not you. But importantly, if you do not pay in full, the bank can take that home away from you. So that's why it's important to know what the deal is before you sign. And finally, normally you pay a monthly payment on this loan. So if we can go on to the next slide, please. So what's in this monthly payment? First and most importantly, and the biggest amount usually, is principal and interest. Principal is the monthly amount of the borrowed money. In other words, if you borrowed $100,000, that $100,000 is chopped into little pieces, and a little piece of that $100,000 is going into each monthly payment. Also, with that little piece of what you borrowed is the interest on that loan that you have. So there are those two pieces in each monthly payment. In addition, you may also have these additional costs built into the monthly payment. Mortgage insurance, and we talked about this last week, that's insurance that the lender will expect you to fund if your down payment is less than 20% of the value of the house. There is also homeowners insurance. I'm not sure I've ever heard of a lender who would not want that. And I'd say most homeowners think it's a good idea to have it anyway. Homeowners insurance, a piece of that is paid every month, and property taxes. These are normal homeowner expenses anyway. They can be built into the monthly payment, which makes perhaps your life a little bit simpler instead of trying to pay them separately, these three other costs. So with that, let's move to the next slide. So what is your loan based on? As we've already indicated, here are maybe the most important of your financial information. First off, income. How much money do you make each year? Second, your savings and available cash. And keep in mind, you're going to need to put some amount of money down in many cases to buy this house. Third, your credit history and credit score. The credit score, you will notice, frequently is cited as an important requirement, particular number, depending again on the type of loan you're looking for. And finally, current debt. As I mentioned earlier, the lender is going to also want to know what loans you might have or have made to buy a car, to finance college. So a sense not just of the current debt, but relative to your income level is usually what that lender is going to be looking at. On the loan side, the terms of the loan as far as years to pay is usually 15 to 30 years. And frequently, the traditional, I guess you could say, is considered to be the 30-year loan, a long time to pay off that debt. The interest rate can be fixed or variable, as I mentioned earlier. So variable would be when it can change from time to time. The loan might have a different interest rate based on your finances. It may sound unfair, but if your financial condition is not as strong, sometimes that interest rate can be higher unless you are approved for one of these special programs that we talk about. Why? Because with weaker financial condition, the lender is more concerned about getting that money back, and so will charge more. So that's the basic underlying thinking of interest rates. Why are they higher or lower? The mortgage will indicate a down payment, and that can be very important relative to the type of financial condition that you have. There are always closing costs. How much and who pays them needs to be factored in. And then sometimes there are purchase restrictions. You'll see that in some of the examples that we share with you. Perhaps a program is limited to first-time buyers. Perhaps this is a purchase of a home that needs repair that is part of this program. So that's what we mean when we say there may be purchase restrictions around certain of these programs. We were asked last week, so what's the rate for a mortgage? And the answer is hard to know. It depends. But what we'll give you just as a stake in the ground, if you will, is so everything else being equal, if you're thinking of a traditional, conventional, 30-year fixed rate mortgage, 20% down payment, you could find the interest rate right now between 4 and 5%. We're still not taking into account your financial situation, what type of an home you're buying, where, or anything like that. So that's why it's very difficult to say, well, what's the going rate? The going rate depends on an awful lot of factors, but we wanted to give you at least a little bit of a sense of where do you start, if you will, with what's considered the traditional and conventional mortgage. And with that, I'll turn it over to Deb.
Okay. Raul, can you go to the next slide, please? Hi, everybody. So now let's get into a little bit more detail. So Barbara gave you kind of an overview of what everything is. We're going to talk about very specific kinds of mortgages. And we're going to start with the traditional mortgage. And that's what she was talking about, a traditional mortgage with a bank or another lending institution, and usually in the 15 to 30-year range. We are going to talk about some of these special kinds of mortgages that are things like if you have a low to moderate income, or if you're a first-time home buyer. There are some specialized mortgages that she talked about with things like houses that need to be repaired, and some others that we will talk about. Or if you have certain characteristics, if you're able to qualify for some of these other special mortgages. And there are some mortgages that have one or more of these types of parameters of things that help you qualify. And so we'll talk a little bit about that. And there's other financing help as well. What I think is really, really important is to know that we are giving you a lot of website links in this presentation, and that you are going to have to do a lot of your own research based on your individual situation, because it is very much about an individual. So I do see a question about age limits. We don't generally see that in mortgages. We generally see more about what type of house it is and what your income level is. And as Barb told you, things like your credit history and your other debt and where you're going to live. So let's get started with that. And if you could give me the next slide, Raul. So the way we've set this up is that you're going to see on each of these mortgages the things that you would have as your characteristic of how you would qualify, and then what some of the financial implications are. So on a traditional or a conventional mortgage, we've talked about this a little bit already, this is available to anybody who qualifies. And so there's nothing special that you have to be or do to qualify for a traditional and conventional mortgage. It's usually from a bank or from a mortgage company. And there are a lot of them. So again, if you're looking into this and this is an option, you want to make sure that you do some research and see where you're getting a good offer and what fits your needs the best. Now, Barbara already told you that you can have a fixed or a variable market interest rate. We talked about variable versus fixed last week. Fixed means that whatever the interest rate is, it's going to be the same for the whole life of the loan. So if you have a 30-year loan at the 4% that she just told you might happen, it'll be 4% the whole time. There are also variable rates which change. And so what that means is for the first year or the first 2 years, you might have a lower rate, but then it goes up. And a lot of times it can be readjusted through the whole life of the loan. So if that's something that you're interested in, you really need to understand what could happen in a rate adjustment and how that would affect your payment. Now, generally for a conventional mortgage, a traditional mortgage, you have to put down a down payment. And Barb mentioned this as well. And she also talked to you about mortgage insurance. Mortgage insurance that the mortgage company or the bank is charging to make sure that they can get back a lot of the money if you stop payment is generally kicking in if you pay less than 20% of the purchase price. So if you have a $100,000 house, they would ask you to put down $20,000 in cash. If you don't have that, you can still get a mortgage, but generally you will have to put down at least 3%, and you will probably have to pay mortgage insurance. So generally, again, for these types of mortgages, you want to have a pretty good credit score. You want to have consistent earnings history. And so what that means is that they want to see that you have a steady job and that you are getting about the same amount of money on a regular basis, and that you don't have too much other debt. And the debt that we're talking about there is what, again, Barb just talked to you about student loans, car loans, other property you might have, or any other places where you do owe money. And then that is also credit cards. That is part of your credit history and your credit report. There are closing costs. We talked a lot about that last week, so I'm not going to go over that again. And then usually there are no restrictions on what kind of property you can get. So that's traditional. Now let's talk about some of these special types of mortgages. And if we could go to the next slide, please. Okay, so there are a lot of programs that are designed for people with low to moderate income or first-time buyers. And again, sometimes they intersect. Sometimes it will be a combination of those things. And we're going to talk to you specifically about 6 of them. And we'll give you a little bit more detail. And again, we're going to give you links to their websites. But again, to determine if these things work for you and are going to meet your needs, you're going to have to do individual research and look into it for yourself. So just as a introduction to the names, the FHA is the Federal Housing Administration, and they have a number of loans that they can offer, usually lower rates. The Maryland State Mortgage Program is designed for people who live in Maryland. There's this NACA, Neighborhood Assistance Corporation of America, which is it's a nonprofit. The Freddie Mac is a combined government and private organization, and they have a couple of programs, and Fannie Mae is the same way. It's a combination of public, government, and private. And then Habitat for Humanity is something that you might have heard about, and they do a lot of work also as a nonprofit private organization. So let's go to slide 9. And the first thing we're going to talk about is the FHA loans. Again, this is a government agency, and it's for most home buyers, including the first-time home buyers. And it works with lenders that have favorable borrowing terms. So FHA is not the actual lender, They are associated with banks and other lenders, and they figure out how some of these things can be available to you. So this is on the HUD website that lists these particular lenders, and you pay mortgage insurance on these loans. So you do have to pay mortgage insurance, but the advantage here is that you can get a low interest rate. And so you not only get a low interest rate, which would be generally lower than that 4 to 5% that Barb just talked to you about, but also you can have a much lower down payment. And that's important if you don't have a lot of cash on hand. And the borrower can also have a lower credit score. So remember, I said that generally for a traditional mortgage, you would want to have a pretty good credit score. If you don't have a great credit score and you don't have a lot of money that you have already saved up, this could be a good alternative for you. And again, you would want to check it out at this website at fha.gov. Okay, let's keep going. Next slide. All right. So they have a couple of different programs. One of them is also called this 203K loan. And remember, we said that there might be some restrictions on what kind of property would be available. And this is for an older or damaged home. And the reason that this would be a good thing is because the loan amount includes some money for repairs. Now, the thing about this is that you can't do it yourself. You have to hire a company or a contractor that is set up in business to do those kinds of repairs and has a license and insurance. But there will be some money set aside to do the repairs for this kind of a house that you already know has some problems with it, but that are fixable. And the loan amount can include the first 6 months of payments if you can't live in that home. So it could be a really good deal if you have a damaged property that you can't live in while they're fixing it up. And so the first 6 months, you don't have to live there and you don't have to pay for it yet until you start paying the loan back. Now, if you are doing this kind of a loan, you have to use one of the FHA approved lenders. I said that those were listed on the website. It could be a fixed or a variable interest rate. It depends. Again, you're going to shop a little bit and compare. It's usually a low down payment. You will have closing costs. Closing costs are things like getting the title to the property and making sure that nobody else owns it, and some of the other things that we talked about the last time. And you have to have, for this one, a pretty decent credit score. So again, I urge you to do research if this is something that you're interested in. And then I'm going to give you back to Barb to talk about some of the other programs that we have that are special programs.
Okay, Deb. So let's move on to the Maryland Mortgage Program. As Deb mentioned, this is through the state of Maryland, and the loans are available through approved lenders. You will see this over and over again, that a number of these government-backed programs, you work with an approved lender, banker, mortgage lender. You don't go directly to the state of Maryland and say, "Hi, I'm here for that loan." This would be for first-time home buyers or those who have not owned for 3 years. This is a qualification that you will notice in several of these programs. First time or hasn't owned a property for 3 years. In this program, you must complete an approved home buyer education program. So this is educating the potential buyer of the issues and the finances behind the buying of the property. what you get with this program, it would be the low 30-year fixed rate interest and down payment assistance. Possibly, it's available. With the Maryland program, there are household income limits. This is done by county. In other words, each county in Maryland has a household income limit, which is based on the size of the household and the county itself. So not surprisingly, for example, Montgomery County, because it's an expensive place to live, has a higher household income limit than, I think, all the other counties in Maryland. Please don't quote me on that, but it is one of the, if not the highest. In this case, for the Maryland program, because they're trying to support people who are entering first time, if you will, into the market, you must have less than 20% of the purchase price. So a little bit different in this case. And then there is assistance with closing costs, at least that it is a feature that is available to some home buyers. Okay, and let's move on to the next slide to see a different type of program, the NACA, Neighborhood Assistance Corporation of America, the nonprofit, and their mission is to support home ownership and community advocacy is what they do. So what they do is they certify and pre-approve the borrower. Now, how do they do that? Well, they're looking for low to moderate income households, no minimum income level in this case, but they require that potential buyer to attend a workshop, work with a counselor, and provide a budget for approval. So that's how they help the buyer understand what he or she can afford and get them ready, if you will, to transact a financial deal that could be quite complicated. And they work with other lenders to find the match. There are a number of large lenders who basically NACA goes to for the actual money. They offer below market fixed interest rate. There's no down payment. There are no closing costs, fees, or mortgage insurance, and no credit score is required. So a lot of the burdens, if you will, of home financing have been relaxed for this particular program, but there's certainly the upfront work that the potential buyer has to do to not just go to the workshop, but have a budget, if you will, a proposal to show that the buyer can actually afford the home that they're wanting to buy, and it has to be approved. So this is a different way of helping that low, moderate income household finance a property. If we can go to the next slide. A couple of big organizations, Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae. Here's Freddie Mac, as Deb mentioned, a government-sponsored but still private organization somewhat. This particular program, Home One program, is for first-time home buyers or those who haven't owned in 3 years. The borrower applies for this loan through a lender. So in this case, you go to the lender, and the lender is the one who's connecting with Freddie Mac. In this case, the home buyer is required to attend an education course. The interest rate is fixed. The down payment is 3%, which is pretty low. However, good credit score is required. So a little bit different than some of the others, an interesting possibility for some home buyers. If we could go to the next slide, let's take a look at Fannie Mae. What we have here is a couple of Fannie Mae programs, the Home Path program or Home Ready Mortgage Initiative. Anyway, this program or programs are for low to moderate income buyers, again, including first-time home buyers. So like many of these programs that we're showing you, it's specifying the type of buyer that they're looking for. In this case, must purchase a Fannie Mae foreclosed home, and repairs may be needed. And what's a foreclosed home? When somebody buys a house, has a mortgage, can't keep up with the mortgage payments, basically defaults, says, I can't pay these payments. As I said, what happens is the bank will keep the home, and the home buyer does not have a house anymore. So that is a foreclosed home, is when the bank says, okay, you're not going to pay me, I'm taking the house. So Fannie Mae will own, in some cases, these homes on behalf of the banker. Really, it's been passed on to Fannie Mae. These foreclosed homes are usually cheaper than similar listings for the relatively similar type of home. And what happens is the buyer is going to work with a Fannie Mae approved lender to get pre-qualified. So again, you're working with a lender, a banker, a mortgage lender to get qualified for one of these homes. And you may have to attend an online course to earn 3% of the purchase price towards closing costs. So that this would be an opportunity, if you want to reduce those fee costs a little bit, to attend an online course. For this particular program, interest rates are usually higher, but the down payment is low. The seller, in this case, may pay some closing costs. In effect, the seller is that person who lost the home, and maybe as part of trying to just settle the ownership and the transfer to a home buyer who can live in the house and support it successfully, the seller may be part of this deal as well. And it does require a good credit score. So here, what's required is a little bit different than some of these other programs. But there are certainly some benefits, and it's relative to that traditional fixed rate mortgage that we started with. It does have some benefits. Okay, so if we can move on to the next slide. Another Fannie Mae program is the Home Style Renovation Loan. And this is for home needing repairs. In this case, that do-it-yourself opportunity is available. Unlike that program that Deb talked about earlier, you don't have to get that licensed professional. The loan includes the purchase price plus estimated cost of repair. And again, similar to that FHA loan, the loan amount can include that first 6 months of payments if the home cannot be occupied. In this case, a low down payment is allowed. Around 3% is what they're citing right now. And again, usually it requires a good credit score. In other words, somebody who has been skilled at managing money over time and managing debt in particular over time. And with that, let's move on to a little bit different type of program. We can go to the next slide. Habitat for Humanity. This is another nonprofit that's dedicated to putting lower income families in homes, helping them get a home. So yes, there's the need to complete an application process with a background check. You must commit to living in the house. Otherwise, there are going to be sales restrictions. So it would be very important to know what this commitment is about, what types of sales restrictions. When you think about an organization like Habitat for Humanity, the goal is here's somebody who really wants to live in this particular house. Their family wants to live in this particular community for a long time, relatively speaking. That's the kind of borrower they're looking for. Interestingly, this is a program that requires what's called sweat equity as part of the purchase agreement. And sweat equity means that the person who's buying the home actually helps with the construction of the home, or at least works with Habitat for Humanity to in other activities that are offering value to this organization, and in effect part of the purchase price of the home. In this case, the purchase price of the home is below market cost. This organization has been known for actually building new homes. So if you're interested in a home like this and you're working on the home, helping Habitat for Humanity to build the home, it's not surprising the purchase price of the home is going to be below market cost, what a normal builder might charge for a similar home. And then, of course, there would be a low down payment. So a very different model compared to some of those government-sponsored programs. And with that, I'm turning it back over to Deb for even more programs that are available out there.
So I'm going to not give you a whole lot of information about some of these other ones, the way that we have for the ones that we just went through, because these are very, very specialized and you have to really be qualified. So once again, we're going to say it really depends on your situation, what you have to go sell yourself with to a lender. But this particular one for the VA, this is the Department of Veteran Affairs. This means that you have served in the armed forces and you're a veteran. And so even for those of you who would not qualify for yourselves, it might be important for maybe some of your children, if they could qualify for this. It is run through the Veterans Affairs Department, and they have competitive interest rates, which means that it may be a little bit lower than some of the other mortgages that we talked to you about, and usually no down payment. And again, it's not for everybody. You have to have served in the armed forces currently or previously. So, Raul, can we go to the next one? This is also really specialized, this one. This is for the Department of Agriculture, the United States Department of Agriculture. And this is for low-income families that live in rural areas. Rural areas means generally farm-type country or open country. That's probably not most of us in Montgomery County, although there are areas in the upper parts of the county that are rural. So for this one, you would have to be living in that type of a rural area where it's not really cities or suburbs. And then you would have to, again, go through one of these approved lenders that the USDA works with. The advantages to this one is that there is no interest rate or a very low interest rate loan. So that would be very, very advantageous in terms of low cost. Also, no down payment up front. So again, very advantageous, and only a minimum credit credit score. So we're where some of these other ones are asking for a good credit score, that is not required here. But again, not probably a lot of people who will qualify for this particular mortgage. And on the next slide, this is the last of the specialized mortgages that we're really going to talk about. This is for HUD, which is the Department of Housing and Urban Development. This is another government agency, and they do work with other lenders. And what they are calling it is the Good Neighbor Next Door program. And again, very specialized because it is for community workers. So community workers would be policemen, teachers, firemen, people who work for the city or county governments. And this is restricted to the homes that they list. So you can't just go buy any home for these particular types of mortgages. You have to buy the ones that they tell you are available, and they're only in certain communities. But they are inexpensive because they're discounted by half, by 50%. And for this one, you have to live in that home for 3 years. So again, things to think about if you're interested in this type of loan, whether you can make these commitments or not. So we've gone through all of the types of mortgages that we are going to talk about today. You're going to have the websites for those. If there are any questions, we can take them now, and then we're going to go to other financing options, and Barb is going to take you through that. All right, take it, Barb.
Okay, other financing options. What we're going to talk about is something called rent-to-own properties. There's also a National Home Buyers Fund that we want to just give you a quick heads up on. And basically, there are other types of down payment assistance. We've got a website for you to share. But let's move to rent-to-own properties on the next slide. What this is the opportunity to rent a home for usually in the 2 to 6 year range and then buy it. Now, who is this for? This is for home buyers that don't have a good credit history and or have flexible or self-employment type income. In other words, from a lender's perspective, that's risky. A lender doesn't know if that person is going to be able to pay regularly on some kind of traditional mortgage. So these are home buyers that are of higher risk, so that this might be a way to purchase the home over time. The idea is that the rent includes an additional monthly payment toward a down payment. And over time, that additional monthly payment, of course, is going to build up, and there'll be that little nest egg, ideally, for buying the home at the end of the contract. Now, some contracts are written as an option. In other words, you've got the choice to buy at the end of the rental, and then some are written with the requirement, the obligation to buy at the end of the rental. And the contract can also include a fixed purchase price. So if you're thinking about it's a six year commitment, you're building up a little nest egg, you've got a fixed purchase price already written into your contract. And you know that you want to live in this property. This is an opportunity perhaps to get into a property that you know where you want to be. You just don't have the money yet or the financial stability to get the kind of loan that you would like to get. So this is an option. I'm not sure that it's a common option, but it's something to be on the lookout for if your circumstances fall into that not good credit history, flexible income, having a hard time with lenders getting qualified, you could ask, do you know about any rent to own, and learn a little bit more. So that's why we offer it here. Next slide, please. National Home Buyers Fund. This is another nonprofit, and their goal is to expand home ownership over the country, around the country. It's specifically for low to moderate income families. And this is a fund where if you apply and get the money, you can use this assistance with other programs. So it isn't an either or, this can be on top of. You do need to have a commitment to live in the home for 3 years. It does require a good credit score. And what you may be able to get for this is 5% of the purchase price that you can allocate to a down payment or closing costs. And certainly the idea is the borrower may not have to repay the assistance. We've couched that because obviously if you don't stay in the house for 3 years, for example, you might be required to repay. So you have to be well aware of whatever qualifying expectations this particular nonprofit has before you sign on the dotted line, so to speak. But just an example of where can you get assistance when you're looking for help with the down payment. And then finally, other down payment assistance. The availability of down payment assistance does vary by state. It also varies by your situation, your financial situation. So what we would suggest as you're trying to get ideas, if you're concerned about your down payment and how much money you have saved for a down payment, just Google down payment assistance and see what some of the programs are. Again, this gives you information that you can take to a conversation with a lender relative to the property that you think you might be interested in buying. So it's one more resource to explore if you need down payment assistance. And with that, we're home stretch now and back to Deb.
So you have seen a lot of information, a lot of details about a lot of different plans that are available, different mortgages, different qualifications, different places that you would buy a house, all of the things that you would have to do as an obligation, whether it's for payment and payment when at any particular time, but also things like the education or the budgeting or the putting together anything that the lenders are requirement, or maybe sometimes helping fix a house. You really need to plan for what works for you. And the way that you do that is you decide, what do you really want? What can you afford? Are you ready for home ownership? Because as we said last week and this week, there are benefits and there are disadvantages, and you need to understand what those are. And then you've seen, particularly today, that there are a lot of choices about where you live and how you pay for those if you're buying a house. So again, I'm going to tell you the same thing that we've been telling you for 2 weeks now, is that you need to do a lot of research. You need to really understand your own situation. You need to understand what you're willing to do, able to do, and then what you want to do and how long you're going to make those commitments for. So that's the summary. So if you could go to the next slide, I'm just going to tell you what we did last week and this week as just a quick wrap up. So last week we talked about whether you should even buy or not buy right now. And so, because there are a lot of obligations, a lot of things that you need to do if you are owning a home, you need to understand the benefits. You need to understand the things that are not so great about owning a home, because now you have to be responsible for it. Your landlord is not going to. What are the costs? How do you go about finding a home and a loan? And then today we talked in a lot of detail. It's very overwhelming sometimes, the detail that we talked about today about financing that home. We talked about what's a mortgage or a loan. I think you got an idea that there's a lot of different kinds of those. And some of the requirements and qualifications for those are very different, depending on whether you have a good credit score, whether you can make down payments, how long you live in a house, what the rates are. The rates could be fixed or variable. There could be many different types of years of a loan. The most common kinds are 30-year loans, but there are also 15 and other types of loans that go for different amounts of time. Your credit score is very important on some of them, not as important on others. And then we gave you a lot of examples. So on the last slide, Raul, with all of that, I know there was a lot of information, but if you have questions or comments, please feel free to either raise your hand or put them in the comment box. Okay, I'm not seeing anything come through. And I hope this was useful for you, and we're at time. So I'm going to let Raul sign off for us. Thank you for all attending.
Thank you, Deb and Barb, for the homeownership workshops. That concludes our workshop topic on homeownership. So our next workshops will be in April, as usual, second and third Wednesday, same time, different link, but same location, Shindig. And we will be sending those to you, as well as the slides and YouTube link, so that you can rewatch the recordings if you'd like. And I hope you'll join us in April when we start to talk about resume writing. Hopefully that is something that a lot of you are interested in or need support with. So we hope to see you again in April for resume writing. And thank you again for coming, and have a wonderful day.